We got to talk about Flag Hag Gate because, like, this is a story that is so funny to me because were it not for Sam Alito being on the Supreme Court, the stakes of it are so unbelievably low that it is so funny that the Washington Post had this story for years, and then they were like, "Oh, like, you know, let's just sit on this or whatever." And look,
if my grandmother told me this story about her neighbor, I would bury her. I wouldn't even send her to a home. I'd be like, your funeral's tomorrow.
But like, I guess like the import of the story is that it basically what it's come down to with Alito with like being forced to respond to this is this story has become about Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito's rock solid commitment to the right to privacy of one very specific woman.
Yes. Well, okay. So that's interesting. That's one way to take it. I actually think that his commitment in the letter is my wife's, first of all, is fucking stupid.
Yes.
And she's a dummy. And I don't agree with anything that she does. I don't even know what she's doing. And actually, the guy down the street called her a cunt, and I didn't do anything about that either.
Yep. Yeah.
That's the letter he sent to Congress.
Well, it's his feral wife is like spitting on their neighbor's car. Having the fact that the neighbors who are like this young couple who put up a sign that was like "fuck Trump" or "abort the Supreme Court," that like I guess kicked off this battle of attrition. They called the cops on her. Calling the cops on this daffy 70-year-old bat over a flag war is capture the fucking flag, lady. Jesus Christ. But, I gotta say, like, this is my favorite. This is my favorite. This is from the CNN. Alito tells lawmakers he will not recuse himself from Supreme Court cases despite flag controversy. And it says repeating claims he had made previously about an upside down flag that flew at his Alexandria, Virginia home in early 2021. Alito said the decision to place the flag was his wife's, and he blamed the decision on a very nasty neighborhood dispute. My wife is a private citizen and she possesses the same First Amendment rights as every other American, Alito wrote in one of his 2 letters sent to members of Congress. She makes her own decisions and I have always respected her right to do so. Continuing, my wife is fond of flying flags, Alito wrote. I am not.
That's the money.
It reminds me of the Donald Trump, the beer summit, Elizabeth Warren tweet. Yeah. It's your house, asshole. Would your wife have a job? Is she paying rent? Best I can tell, she's just a frump who loves flags and hates democracy.
Yeah, you're going for Brett Kavanaugh's. I like beer. I drink beer. A lot of Supreme Court justices, they liked it. They have those nice, concise sentences. That's how they got into those positions.
Yeah, I am not a fan of flying flags, but my wife is. And like, this is all this goofy stuff about like flying the flag upside down as like a signal of distress right after the election. And then all of America learned this week about the appeal to heaven flag, which is like some goofy QAnon thing. I like this is all very much about like signaling what appears to be a sitting Supreme Court justice's like a household approval of like this narrative that Donald Trump was unjustly denied re-election because Joe Biden stole it or something like that.
Yeah, which is relevant because some of those cases
because he's hearing cases.
The Supreme Court. Yeah, exactly.
These are in cases that directly involve this, but like Alito's daffy flag wife. I mean, she like her beliefs and opinions. Like that's one thing, but Ginny Thomas is on like a completely different level because like wasn't she having phone calls the day of January 6th, just literally being like, when did the secret tribunal start? Has Joe Biden been executed yet?
Right. Oh yeah. Ginny Thomas, like you can't even call what she believes in QAnon. She believes in like a version of Kingdom Hearts where Donald Trump is Sora.
That is exactly what she believes. And she was doing a lot. I mean, I think she was really involved in the run up to the Stop the Steal rally, as I recall. I should probably have that in front of me. But she definitely is like a conservative activist, whereas Alito's wife seems to be more of the annoying neighbor variety.
Well, I do think this probably reveals that the two are like walking buddies or something. I mean, they definitely are in the same circle.
I guess it's just funny because like Ginny Thomas's like undisclosed connections to the people who tried to overturn the election and her numerous ties to like conservative legal groups that have business before the court is like a fairly flagrant violation of like failure to disclose. But I guess just more broadly, what is it about these wives that are so out of pocket? And crucially, why do the men who are spearheading a legal movement to like bring women under control to the listen up females movement to like why can't they control their wives? Why can't they get them to stop doing loony shit like flying flags upside down and spitting on their neighbors?
I mean, I definitely think part of it is almost like mob stuff, right? Where you have all the properties put under the wife's name rather than their own name. It's kind of they have to be blocked off and doing certain things, and so the wife kind of comes in as like this id, kind of more literally in Leo's case, where they can kind of be the nasty person that the Supreme Court justices can't really want to be.
It kind of reminds me of like military wives, where like they always try to take on in the Association of Military Wives the rank of their husband. So like the captain's wife is like bossing around and looking down on the chief's wife, but like who the fuck are you?
Remember all the drama over David Petraeus's biographer who was fucking? Where, like she just like kind of moved into this like Florida military community, like where CENTCOM is, and was like, I'm David Petraeus's biographer, and all the other wives got real salty because she was like, she's giving orders and she's not even in the chain of command.
They start throwing rank. They do it.
Is there like a wife special forces? Like, can you get selected for wife Delta Force?
But you have secret missions for cheating if you do that.
Well, as long as we're talking about military wives, I think the whole flag controversy that's going on right now obscures a much greater scandal at play here, or a much juicier element to this story, because everyone's talking about, is it appropriate to have a sitting Supreme Court justice like household advertise his affinity with a aborted coup attempt? Maybe not, but I think this goes deeper than that. I think all of this flag stuff is about one thing and one thing only: swinging.
Yes.
I think the appeal to heaven flag is like, I think they're capping that it's a QAnon thing. I think that this is a swinger code in the lifestyle that people use to advertise, hey, we're down to clown.
Yeah, so the upside down flag, that's like anal, probably, right? That's been going on for centuries and no one's even noticed until just now.
Yeah, everyone says it's a signal of distress. It's a signal I'm distressed that no one's fucking my wife.
I'm kind of imagining like the huge gulp before you go in to swing with the Alitos, where you're like, this is good for us, honey, but fuck, man.
It's like all these like Leonard Leo law clerks are just like grimly marching to the orgy like it's the gallows, and they're just thinking like, I'm gonna be a judge one day. I got to make a partner at this law firm that
gotta get it done.
Got to do what you got to do, baby.
One thing I want to say about this letter, the letter that he sends back, I've heard a lot of the SCOTUS commentators talking about this stuff, and I don't really generally talk a lot about Supreme Court because I've listened to you guys for years, and you actually don't get anything wrong about the Supreme Court because it's all an exercise of political power and stuff like this. It's pretty obvious, it's pretty easy. You don't need legal training to figure out what's going on in the hot button cases. But one thing that there are people who really love talking about the Supreme Court, and I don't hear any of them mentioning this. The letter cites to this code of conduct, and he says, well, look, my conduct doesn't meet the standards set forth in the code of conduct. But what I don't hear people talking about is like, this code of conduct just came out. It was just created because of the Ginny Thomas stuff, because of the Clarence Thomas stuff last year. It just came out in November 2023. This event, this Alito letter, is the first test of that code of conduct. And what we find out, the big huddle they did, the drafts going back and forth, the code of conduct they promulgated, what we find out they came up with this beautiful standard is, I get to decide my own recusal. I get to find and frame all the facts and nobody can review my decision. And then I apply the reasonable person standard to the facts I just set out. So the process they came up with is essentially to just take the letter, stick it in my ass, and rub it around until there's a skid mark on it, and throw it in your fucking face.
Alito's wife actually did that to her neighbor.
On the car, too. Which is
They stuck it on the windshield of the car after getting a big skid going down it. But I guess to your point about the Supreme Court, there isn't much juice there for people who are interested in the law. I mean, obviously its effects on the law are great, but the essential problem with the Supreme Court as an institution, or at least the sort of crisis that they're undergoing right now and trying to sell this idea that they are judicial and not political appointees. And to that end, Did you see Stephen Breyer's? This was a couple months ago. This is in April in the New York Times. This is Stephen Breyer writing in the New York Times op-ed piece. The Supreme Court I served on was made up of friends. And like, I guess what do you make of this effort to like retcon some lost comedy in the Supreme Court? Like he mentions, Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Justice Scalia were both huge fans of opera, and they would go to the opera together. And this idea that they can be this like, why is it so important that everyone imagine that these people actually like each other?
Well, I don't think it's a retcon much at all. I think they did like each other, and I think that's why, they would all get together and like 6-0, make it so that, civil liberties were, chipped away at over 20 years or things like class actions, they get sent to arbitration, things like that. I mean, they were able to do that because they all liked each other, I'm sure. Now that things are a little more acrimonious is when you start to see them break down maybe on some of the other issues. But I think in the past, they were all together and they were all together doing bad stuff.
Well, I guess like it's like the utility of the institution functions when it exercises power in a way that people don't notice. Even though we give these fucking mummies like, near godlike authority over our law, it's easier to swallow when there is like some swing votes, or that there's this like I said, this sense of friendship, that they're all just kind of on the same team. I mean, it's kind of similar to the Israel lobby, right? Like, why is it so powerful, or why was it able to exert the level of influences that it does over our government? It's because nobody talks about them or notices it. And what we're seeing now is that like to do their job, they have to exercise power in a very public way, in a way that is very obvious, very, very corrupt, and a way that like sort of makes people question like, hey, is this rational? Like, is this normal?
I think it highlights the contradictions. I think in the same way that Israel now is more directly breaking international humanitarian law standards and processes, makes more people globally look at Israel more critically, as the Supreme Court now has to decide, things like abortion, but also now that the president is up there saying, hey, I shouldn't be charged, or the former president, I should say, I shouldn't be charged with any crimes ever. And now they have to take a stance on that. It starts to make more naked the stark political reality of the Supreme Court. And I think that, that makes them not allowed to be friends as much anymore.
I also like that era is coming to an end.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, like this whole, I don't know if you recall this, there was this article, or there was a lot of questioning of Nina Totenberg. She's been like the court reporter, essentially the official, friend of all of them, and like goes to their house and has, brunch with all of the justices, and, becomes very buddy with them. But people were started questioning this, like, why are you the official court narrator when you didn't catch any of this shit that people found by just looking at public documents that have Clarence Thomas's name on them? Like, what the fuck happened here? People were trusting you to look into these people and report on them, and all you reported on was like, the fucking scones that they had at breakfast.
And and now whether it's like all of the enormous loans that were just forgiven for like, that were just written off apparently for like Thomas and fucking Kavanaugh. Like the fucking RV that some asshole bought Clarence Thomas,
right?
And when people notice it, or like they're just like, it's still, they have all the power to just be like, no, this is okay, I'm not resigning, or I'm not.
I checked and I decided. I listen, babe. I'm telling you, I didn't fuck her, and you can't question me on that.
Yeah, don't look at my phone.
Yeah,
it definitely. Like, just to echo Andy's point, it didn't go unnoticed because, Ruth Bader Ginsburg's clerks or whoever's clerks and the justices themselves were all part of the same happy family. They're not going to go after each other, because then everybody just starts recriminating after each other, one after the other. And so that's how they build that comedy. And that's, how they're able to keep the Supreme Court going, even as, bad decision after bad decision happens, over the course of our lifetimes, for sure.
I mean, like, and another, like, sort of like, breakdown in the illusion that allows this institution to continue to, exert the outsized, power that it does over the law undemocratically. I'm surprised not more was made of the fact that right after the Dobbs decision, like in the month following it, Justice Alito went to Europe and gave a public speech where he basically just spiked the football. He went to a foreign country and gave a speech to like some dinner of like, I don't know, probably like former Nazis or something like that, where he was just like, the people who are criticizing this decision, like, tough shit. Like, this is what we're doing now.
To be fair, he spiked the football when he leaked the decision like a month early.
True. Yeah.
he was spiking the football in much worse ways for months on end.
In terms of other weird shit going on with the Supreme Court and the justices who fill it, another thing, were you guys following the scandal about Clarence Thomas's clerk, Crystal Clanton?
No, I have not.
Okay, this is Jane Mayer broke this in the New Yorker in February of this year. But Crystal Clanton was the TPUSA director who was known for one thing, and it was the text she sent in 2015 that said, "I hate black people. Like, fuck them all. I hate blacks. End of story."
Nice.
And basically, like
one thing you don't want to be caught sending a text about.
And basically says, but she's like, she has become like a clerk for Clarence Thomas, and she's become a clerk for Clarence Thomas.
So she changed? We're gonna go after her for changing? That's what we're about now?
People can't apologize.
What's this here? She became a clerk because Ginny Thomas essentially adopted her, and like she moved into the Thomas's house.
This is like reverse Blindside.
I was going to say reverse Get Out. Maybe this is like a reverse Get Out situation.
It says here, the story would likely long be forgotten were it not for an extremely strange plot twist. After the texting scandal, Ginny Thomas, the lobbyist and politically active wife of Clarence Thomas, who had worked closely with Clanton as an advisor to Turning Point, unofficially adopted Clanton as the couple's protege. The Thomases harbor deep anger at the mainstream media, stemming in part from the justice's embattled 1991 confirmation hearing, and evidently saw in Clanton a fellow victim. Soon after leaving Turning Point, Clanton started working for Ginny Thomas. Remarkably, the Thomases then invited Clanton to live with them at their home in Exurban, Virginia, for the better part of the next year. The couple encouraged Clanton to go to law school, and Justice Thomas himself recommended her when she was successfully applied to the Antonin Scalia Law School at George Mason University. Justice Thomas also helped Clanton, who graduated in 2022, line up a prestigious judicial clerkship with Chief Judge William H. Pryor of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit. Supreme Court clerkships was left for a year, extremely valuable in both professional and financial terms. But like, so like, yeah, they just adopted this crazy woman, and now she's a clerk for Justice Thomas. But like, once again, swinging.
Yeah, that's it. That's
I was going to say, actually, I think you already explained this one.
What is at the heart of the American system of law? It's sucking and fucking.
Now we got to investigate Clarence Thomas's house and see what kind of flags they're flying over there. There's going to be like a burning Romanian flag or something, and it's going to look very, very impartial.
They're going to find a pineapple flag.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then, like, I mean, like you mentioned this code of conduct, which is basically only exists because of Ginny Thomas. I think it's really funny. It's like none of these other justices' spouses are like causing actually like codes of conduct to be written. But like, have you been watching Dick Durbin's absolutely pathetic debasement of himself, where he just keeps whinging to he's like, this is on Justice Roberts. Justice Roberts needs to adhere to the code of conduct. And then Justice Roberts just today just said, no, I'm not going to do anything about this. But like, he's on the Judiciary Committee. He's not even going to hold a hearing about this shit.
I have never seen someone follow the Montenegrin 10 Commandments as loyally as Dick Durbin. That is a man who he abhors work.
Yeah, the Alito letter is actually pretty funny in this regard, because if you'll notice, the Durbin letter goes to John Roberts and says, hey, you gonna fucking do something about this? And what Alito says in the letter is, look, I'm responding to you directly, because if you look at the code of conduct, I get to judge my own case. So next time, why don't you just fucking at me directly? Don't talk to my boss. And then he spins into his letter. So it's pretty funny because he's just getting dog walked.
Well, I mean, like, given that the problem of the Supreme Court looks like it's going to continue existing, I'm wondering, like, what are the remedies for something like this? I mean, people talk about impeaching justices or stacking the court, which are like currently not on offer, nor will they be on offer until there's a Democratic president.
I mean, I think this goes to the ethos of our podcast, but it definitely won't involve lawyers. I think all the solutions involve things other than lawyers, and we're happy to help, but it's got to start from somewhere else.
That's right. It's going to involve operators
and a lot of swinging.